Welcome to another episode of The Marketer's Edge, a series designed to share senior level marketing perspective about marketer challenges, opportunities, and agency relationships. Our goal is to help marketers and agencies learn from other marketers across different industries. Today, we're talking with Jason Falls, the Executive Vice President for CIPIO.ai, a platform that helps brands unlock organic growth through community commerce automation. CIPIO.ai is based in Fairfax, Virginia. Jason, thanks for joining us today. How have you been?
I've been great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and while I know your headquarters is in Fairfax, you're just down the road from us here in Cincinnati and Louisville. So great town. And again, thanks a lot for making the time today.
Glad to do it, man. Let's get into it.
All right. So I've got a small handful of questions for you, but before we do that, can you tell me a little bit about CIPIO.ai, what you do for the organization? I'd like our audience to know what kind of company it is and what you do for them.
Sure. So CIPIO.ai is what we call a community commerce marketing platform, and that's kind of a new category. We feel like we're kind of carving out a new sort of category of marketing strategy, marketing automation, and certainly marketing software. It is a software company. We're an early stage SaaS product, and essentially we're a platform that is built on a number of applications. And all of those applications help brands kind of ignite growth through their own communities. And so the foundational application that's sort of our bread and butter right now as we build and grow more is our community influence marketing platform. And so instead of being an influencer marketing software where you go type in a keyword and you get a list of social media people with a bunch of followers and then you start working through them, we actually plug our customers and clients into our platform and map their community. So their customers, their social media followers, their affinity brand followers, their competitor followers, people who use the same hashtags, etc. So you can get a full spectrum look at who you actually touch, the people that know you online, and we find the influential people that are already there, that are already connected to you. So instead of
Interesting.
going out and looking for social media influence, we actually map it from within and work from there.
Got it. Got it. So would these people that you're finding within a brand's followers community, or however to best characterize that, would some of these people that you're tapping not necessarily be influencers or like professional influencers as we know
Yep,
them, or
absolutely true. It's going to be a
okay,
combination of both. I mean, when
okay,
in fact, for you probably know this brand, but maybe some people out there don't. One of our customers is Hall's Beer Cheese, and
okay,
it's a cheese spread you put on crackers, great for tailgating, things like that. And so when we mapped their community, David Arquette popped up, right? So because he follows the brand, so you're going to
interesting.
identify the actual professional influencers, celebrities, whatever that
Hmm.
follow you, but you're also going to find the people who have 500, 1,000, 1,500 followers who probably don't even consider themselves as influencers or content creators,
Right.
and reaching out to that group of sort of nano micro influencers and saying,
Interesting.
hey, we'd love to partner with you to tell your
Interesting.
friends and family about our brand. Much more authentic way to do it.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. I'm curious, you've spent your entire career in the digital social influencer space, specific to influencer marketing. Curious, how has the industry changed? I know there was a period of time when influencer credibility was in question given the way they were compensated. Maybe talk to me a little bit about influencer marketing, how it's different today than say it was, 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Sure. Well, I think the primary difference today is, we're starting to think about it much more strategically and holistically, and brands are getting much more familiar with, okay, yeah, there are these celebrity-ish influencers out there that have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of followers, and there's a cost associated with that. And,
Sure.
some of them are absolutely worth the cost, because you got to remember, when you work with a professional influencer slash content creator, you're getting three things. You're getting their time, which is worth money. You're getting the content that they can create, which you can use, which is an asset that's worth money. And then you're also getting access to their audience if you prescribe the relationship that way.
Sure.
And so there are plenty of people out there who you might have thought, oh, they're an influencer, they're this peace sign duck lips crowd, right? So they're not really effective. But you actually look into the numbers and the engagement they have with their audience, and you've realized some of these folks are actually really good. And a lot of the negative connotation of influencer is actually manufactured by mainstream media coverage, because when
Yeah,
they talk about influencers, they only talk about the negative. They don't talk about all the hundreds of
sure.
thousands that are out there that are good.
Yeah,
So the biggest thing is we're just starting to think about them much more holistically.
right.
Micro and nano influencers are much more effective because they have a much more genuine, authentic connection to the people who they connect with.
Got it.
That's
Yep,
why moving through your community is, an aspect that we like to take at CIPIO.
got
But
it.
if you really think about influencer marketing, back it up even more than 5 years, 10, 15 years ago, we didn't call them influencers. We called them just bloggers. We called it blogger relations,
True.
or
Right.
sometimes people called them mavens, things like that. But even go back before social media, public relations, media relations is influencer marketing. It's all the same
Right.
thing. And
Sure.
I'm a PR
Absolutely.
guy by trade, which is why I love the influencer space so much, because it's really about working with a third party that has an audience and has influence over that audience to figure out how you can communicate through them to that audience to
Yeah.
persuade that audience to take action. So there's some nuances that are different, but it's really not this like weird enigma of a puzzle to figure out.
Sure.
It's just,
Sure.
how can we provide value to them so that we can get value back and ultimately provide their audience with great content.
Yep. No, that's great. And just so our audience knows what you're talking about, when you talk about micro and nano influencers, that's based on the number of followers. Isn't that sort of how it's categorized?
Yeah, in general, when you're talking about there's the way that the industry has sort of broken it down, and everybody
Mhm.
has different numbers. Nano influencers are people that have like a few hundred, maybe just 1,000 or 2,000 followers. Then
Okay.
you get into the micro influencers, and that's generally people below, let's say, 15, 20,000 followers.
Okay.
And then you've got mid tier, which is up to probably 100 or so. And then you've got mega
Got it.
influencers that have more followers than the local daily newspaper, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then
Right.
certainly you can get into the millions, and that's the celebrity kind of
Yeah.
level of influence.
Yeah. So we talked about sort of the comparison to the past as you look, say, 3 to 5 years out. What's your prediction? Where do you think this world of influencer will go?
Well, the consumers are telling us. This is not something I'm predicting. It's just kind of
Okay.
understanding the consumer behavior. If you go back and you think about all of the wisdom that we've been given over the last 20 years about word of mouth marketing, it's kind of coming true. Consumers are tired of advertising. They don't want to be yelled at. We've known that for a while. That's why social media sort of exists. Um, they trust more than any other channel. They trust the recommendation of family and friends.
Hmm.
And then when you step down from family and friends, you've got, okay, people that are in my community, people that I know. I maybe not am friends with them, but they're people that share some common thread with me. And then
Sure.
there's like expert reviews, which bleeds into this sort of influencer category. And then online influencers are in there, content creators that they go to every day to be entertained or informed. Those recommendations are much more powerful than traditional advertising. So it's not going away. And
Right.
consumers are going to continue to come to voices that they trust in certain niche, sort of verticals and industries and
Yeah.
topics. So I think what the future of sort of influence marketing, and I like to use it without the R, because I think of it in terms of not how many followers you have, but how actually
Sure.
influential you are. And it can be offline too. But I think the future of influence marketing, brands are going to start to identify with and build relationships with those vertical category and topical creators that
Hmm.
have trust built
Right.
into their audience, and their audience trusts
Right.
them. And I think it's going to continue to grow. I do think that brands are going to start to look for those nano influencers and micro influencers that are not the big social media followers, because they can be
Sure.
more authentic and more effective. And mapping them through their own community is a little bit easier and more efficient, because you're talking to people who already know you. So
Yeah.
that's sort of where I'm at in the world is, let's figure that piece out, because it's going to work.
Yeah, we're moving into a world of such one-on-one marketing that
Mhm.
what you're describing and sort of your vision for where this industry might go makes really good sense. So just a slight off topic question. As I look at sort of your background, you've worked with agencies, you've worked for retailers, you started businesses on your own, among many other things. Quite impressive. I'm just curious, what were the high points of your or career, to date, in terms of just pure enjoyment, and then separately, what are you most proud of?
Oh, sure. That's an interesting question. So, I think the thing that really that I'm probably most proud of and had a lot of fun doing, and I'm trying to replicate it now because I had so much fun with it. But when I first landed in the agency world, it was at the very beginnings of brands using social media. So I
Okay.
started this blog called Social Media Explorer, and not to be confused with Social Media Examiner, which is very close. That's a lot bigger than Social Media
Okay.
Explorer. But in 2010, 2011, Social Media Explorer was one of the most widely read social media strategy blogs out there. In fact, back in the day, Ad Age had a ranking of marketing blogs called the Power 150.
Hmm.
And for about 3 weeks, it was ranked number one in the world as the most widely
Wow,
read marketing blog.
that's awesome.
So I was really proud of that because it was kind of validation that, my little ideas about how the world of social media should work for brands were actually resonating with people.
Yeah, that's
And
fantastic.
it opened the door for me writing a couple of books and speaking at conferences and things like that too. So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was a lot of fun to not just share my ideas, but I also had other people who wrote for me too. So I kind of built a
yeah.
little, content aggregation point. I'm doing the same kind of thing now on the side as kind of a side project with the Marketing Podcast Network, bringing together marketing podcasts into a community where people can come to our website and kind of have this home page for thought leadership and opinion of the day by
Yep,
seeing some of the latest, greatest marketing podcast episodes out there. So I'm doing the
definitely.
same kind of thing now because I had so much fun doing that. And that was a
Yeah,
big thrill
that's
for me.
awesome. Good for you. So jumping back into the world of it, as you call it, influence marketing. I understand that CIPIO.ai matches sort of behavioral characteristics of influencers with behavioral characteristics of consumers to try and create a real and more meaningful experience for the consumers we were talking before. I'm curious, how does this approach differ from other approaches? Like I've heard of like CreatorIQ that authenticates influencers to make certain they bring to the party exactly what the marketer is looking for.
Sure. Well, and all the tools in general kind of operate the same way.
Okay.
In fact, with Scipio, we prefer when we reach out to a creator, they have to kind of authenticate through our platform, just like Creator IQ would have theirs
Got it.
authenticated. So the main difference that we do is really that perspective of from the inside out rather than the outside in. We're not going to go find people who might know who you are, who
Right.
maybe you have to bribe or pay or or teach them or give them a lot of information about your brand. We're finding people
Sure.
who already know you,
Yep.
and who probably have a higher tendency to say, "Oh, I love that brand. I would be glad to partner with you guys."
Sure.
And depending upon their perception of how influential they are or whether or not they're an influencer or a content creator, it might be that they're willing to do it for just some coupons or some free product. You
Sure.
don't necessarily
Yep.
have to pay that type of creator as much
Yeah.
money, and so it
Yeah.
makes for a little different animal. But
Okay.
most of the influence marketing software, platforms work generally the same way. You go
Okay.
in and you type in a keyword, and they go out and try to find people who use that keyword, who have a lot of followers.
Got it.
And so our search and discovery is actually very different too, because when you come to Scipio and you start say, okay, I'm going to start a new campaign and I'm looking for content creators, but you're looking for content creators that have a certain style of content or meet a certain demographic or their audience meets a certain demographic. So you can either type in using natural language processing. This is
Okay.
where the AI comes in the CIPIO.ai. Or you can actually, if you've got an image that you like and say, I want content creators that create this type of image.
Hmm.
So I use one as an example of, I of course use middle-aged fat guys with a beard who drink bourbon. I'll throw that up there, and normally people who look like me come up, right? But I
There you
also
go.
have an image that I use as a test to show people of a woman in a yoga class, doing some sort of yoga pose, but
Hmm.
it's got copy over the image, so there's some inspirational quote over it. If I upload that into our search and discovery engine, we use artificial intelligence and NLP and whatnot to go out and find content creators that create that type of content. Because if that's what you're
Interesting.
looking for, it doesn't matter how many times they use a given keyword. You want
Sure.
creators who are on brand, that are going to
Huh,
create the
that's
type
awesome.
of content that you want. So you start there. And
Yeah.
then because we've got your brand plugged into our platform and we know a lot about you, we then say, okay, here are the content creators that are a part of your community, that are plugged into you already, or at least use the same hashtags and whatnot, that create this type of content you're looking for. So we get you closer to better creators
Yeah.
faster than just a
Yeah.
keyword search.
That's very cool. Love it. So walking into this job of executive vice president at CIPIO.ai, what do you think some of your biggest challenges are going to be?
Well, right now, I mean, we're still a seed stage startup. So the
Okay.
biggest challenge is how much can I do in a given day? Because we don't have a huge team. We don't have
Right.
a huge budget. We just closed our seed stage funding, and we're not going to be to Series A probably for another 9 to 12 months.
Okay.
So we've got to be scrappy. We've got to get the word out, doing things like this. We're creating a webinar series. We've got a newsletter. We do a podcast. And
Got
so
it.
we're trying to kind of organically grow what we're doing
Okay.
to get the word out. So that the biggest challenge right now is just
Yeah.
resources and making
Right.
real effective and efficient use of our time and energies. But I think also, too, we're creating a new category. I mean, community commerce marketing includes the influencer piece, but it also includes other elements that will help your brand grow through your own community. So on the
Hmm.
B2B side, it's not so much about going out and finding influencers in your community as it is mapping the connections that you already have to reach the people you're trying to connect with.
Sure. Sure.
And so kind of
Yeah.
using a little bit of a referral, we have what's called a community referral automation application that helps you map your B2B community.
Okay.
So we have to kind of teach the marketplace that this is more than influencer marketing, that this is bigger than that, that it's community commerce marketing is a new category. And so that's a challenge. When I think it was, Marketo, first launched, nobody knew what, customer relationship management or marketing was.
Sure.
CRM wasn't a
Yeah.
thing. They had to teach people what it was. And
Yeah.
so we have to do
So
that. And that's a big mountain to climb.
any sort of experiences that you've had in the past, easy for me to say, that you can might draw from and help you manage your way through what you're kind of working through right now?
Well, not in terms of defining a category in terms of a SaaS product, but
Yeah.
my background and the reason I think that Sandeep Sanghavi, our CEO and chairman, the reason he wanted to bring me on board was Jason knows how to educate folks. He knows how to create
Yeah.
content that teaches people what this is all about. I've been doing it since 2005, creating content on how brands can use social media, and then later, how brands can use influencers. And so, I've written 3 books. I've cranked out thousands of webinars. I've created a
Okay.
lot of online course content. And so my background is about sort of educating the market in a
Yeah.
smart way and thinking about it strategically. And so that's what I'm pulling from to be able to be successful here.
That's great. That's great. So I've got just about 4 questions left for you. Curious, how do you market CIPIO.ai to build awareness and trial? Who are your target customers? How do you most effectively reach them and compel them, to try the platform? And then, as part of that answer, anything particularly unique you're doing? I mean, I know you're reaching out to folks, via platforms like ours here, but talk to me a little bit about sort of the marketing of CIPIO.ai.
Sure. So we've got a combination of, lead generation and demand generation,
Okay.
approaches. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of go wrong is they think, oh, well, let's create a bunch of content that drives leads and that'll solve all of our problems. Well, it may, if your content's compelling enough and you're able to promote
Right.
it, to the right people and get enough eyeballs on it. But organic growth is long and slow, and it's oftentimes a lot slower than if you're in, sort of the startup investment game and trying
Yep.
to answer to those stakeholders. You can't rely on just lead generation, content, organic growth to keep pace with what the demands
Right.
are.
Yeah,
So
that
you
tail can
have
be a
to,
little
yeah,
long. Yeah.
you have to mix in a demand gen. And so we are, I think, very wisely, and this started to happen before I even came to the table. We started out by focusing on a vertical. And because of some connections
Okay.
within our investment community and whatnot, we had some really nice connections to the fitness and wellness,
Hmm.
world. And
Okay.
so
Nice.
we built the original community influence marketing platform using a lot of those brands and had success there. So now what my challenge has been is let's identify the next 3 or 4 verticals that we should focus on from a demand gen perspective, and reaching out to them directly, whether it be via
Mhm.
email or phone or going to some events or whatnot, and trying to show them the benefits of looking at marketing this way and using
Right.
this type of approach. At the
Right.
same time, in parallel, we have a webinar series which actually starts tomorrow, after the day
Okay.
after we're
Nice.
recording this, right? We also have a podcast that's now weekly that we're running both as a video and as an audio thing to try to
Okay.
educate the marketplace about community commerce marketing.
Okay.
Not so much overtly selling the software. In fact, we're not really talking about the software a whole lot in the conversations. We're getting
Right.
perspectives like you do from
Yes.
marketing leaders and company leaders out there about what community means and how they're leveraging it so that we can
Yeah.
give our prospective clients
Yeah.
ideas.
Okay.
And then we
That's very
have kind
cool.
of a thought leadership piece that we publish every week. And then I'm doing things like this where I'm just kind of getting out and trying to get people thinking about what community commerce means for them. And then
Yeah.
beyond that, what community commerce marketing means for them
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
they can start
Definitely.
thinking about making those changes for their brands.
Yeah. Definitely a different way of thinking about the space related to influence marketing. So, I assume you either currently do or have worked with agencies before, and if so, what have you used them most often to do to support the
Sure.
businesses you've worked on?
Well, I've been on the agency side most of my career.
Yep.
So I've had
Yes.
2 stops, including CIPIO. I've had 2 stops on the brand side, and certainly have
Okay.
loved leveraging and using agency partners. A couple of things that I, just based on my background and my skill set and what I know I can
Mhm.
build internally versus what I need help with. I think that the best thing you can do with your agency dollar, once you have your mechanisms in place, like I've got a friend of mine who's a really smart HubSpot consultant type thinker, and so
Yeah.
we use HubSpot, and so I'm going to engage him to help me make sure that mechanism is running, and that's a finely oiled machine. And I've got web development partners and whatnot that we use that are really really good. But when I get to a point, if I get a bunch of funding, this year, and several $100,000 is dropped in my laps to say, okay, now pour
Sure.
gas on the fire and grow it, I'm gonna turn to first probably a strategic creative agency,
Okay.
because I think that as creative as I think I am, every time I work with a creative agency, they come up with ideas that I could never have dreamt of that are probably really going to be really good. At least one of them is going to come through as this nugget of, man, if we
Yeah.
execute that creative in the marketplace, now all of a sudden people are going to see us
Yeah.
as bigger and better. So I love tapping into the creative industry and the creative juices that are out there at agencies, but they have to be thinking about that creativity strategically. It can't just be PR stunts and
Yeah.
fun goofy things. It's got to be PR stunts and fun goofy things that lead the audience to say, I need to consider, try, buy, etc. And
Absolutely.
that's where I'm going to invest my agency dollars.
Cool. So, any advice that you'd give to a marketer that was maybe thinking about bringing on an agency for the first time?
Oof. Well, I mean, really look at their work and analyze it through the lens of strategy.
Okay.
Again, it's one thing to do, and I'm going to use a bad example because it's a mega brand that not very many people have to deal with. But is the Burger King head, the big, mascot, is that a strategic, creative execution? It's amusing, it's funny, it gets attention, but
Sure.
I'm not going to put a gimmick like that in a B2B software setting or,
Sure.
something else, because a gimmick is just okay, it'll get attention, but if it doesn't communicate the benefit of the product
Right.
in some
Yeah.
way. So look at the creative that they've done for their previous clients and previous brands,
Right.
and does it effectively communicate their USP? Does it effectively tell people how they're going to benefit from using that product, and what that product's going to do for their business? If you
Right.
can find
Right.
someone that's got that nice balance of really fun, inventive, creative, it doesn't have to be funny, it doesn't have to be silly, but something that's going to get your
Yeah.
attention getting creative, but that also communicates that USP in a very simple manner, you've probably got a creative agency
Yeah.
that's going to do
Yeah.
well for you.
That's great advice. I haven't really heard any of the folks I've interviewed talk about it in that way, sort of thinking, it's easy to get allured by, sexy, funny, creative, but if it's not doing what you suggest that it ought to be doing. And I think also one of the, pieces of counsel I give to agencies we work with is make sure that your ideas are grounded in either consumer, business, or industry insights.
Yeah.
Why are you moving in this direction? What do you know about your consumer that is making you create the creative that you are? So I think that's great advice, and a relatively, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's a relatively easy thing for a marketer to do.
Yeah.
As long as they take a step back and don't get enamored with, how funny, creative, sexy the creative is. I think it's something that is definitely doable.
Well, and a way to kind of restate what you just said in an interesting way that kind of
Yeah.
ties what I was saying together is, if you're looking at really interesting creative, and you look at it through that strategic lens,
Yep.
a really interesting way, a fun way, and an easy way, I think, to figure out if the agency really knows what they're doing is to say, okay, why did you do that? Why?
Right.
Tell me the why. And if they
Right.
can back it up with what you said, kind of the data,
Right.
the insights, now you're
Absolutely.
probably working with somebody who knows what they're doing.
There you go. So let me flip it on the other side. If an agency, say, was trying to knock down your door and attempting to win business from you, what advice would you give that agency?
Please don't LinkedIn spam me. Uh, no, I think, I really think it circles back to the same thing. If you can get my attention and show me that you know how to create compelling marketing communications
Hmm.
that very quickly and simply shows the ultimate audience the benefit of this product and why they should consider it, and back it up with the why. This is why the creative works, because we know this
Yeah.
about that consumer. If you can show me that, then I know you're competent. I know you're going to be able to do a good job, and I'm probably much more likely to say, okay, I'm gonna look more deeply into to your agency. And then ultimately at that point, it comes down to, what's the good chemistry fit? Am I going to get along
Sure.
with them? All that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And that's one of those things. There are probably, I would say, dozens, but there's probably hundreds of fantastic agencies out there.
Sure.
And the decision ultimately comes down to, do I jive with them?
Yeah.
Do they get
Yeah.
me? Do I get them? Do I
Yeah.
feel comfortable with them? Because these are people that you're going to battle with. And so there's
Right.
got to be some chemistry there. It's going to be really awkward.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great advice. And so I've got one last question for you. This is sort of an outlier question.
Uh-oh.
Um, but I noticed that you received your master's in sports management from West Virginia University.
I
And I'm
did.
curious, why did you pursue that degree, and what were your thoughts relative to how you might use it? Certainly don't see that degree every day among the folks that I talk to in the Marketer's Edge.
So a quick, long story that I'll try to make short. I worked in radio when I was in high school.
Okay.
And when I went
Okay.
to college, I worked in the PR arm of the athletic department, which they called sports information back then. It's called athletic
Okay.
media relations these days. And in working with the athletic department, Steve Hamilton, who was an old Major League Baseball pitcher and NBA player, by the way, from the
Okay. Nice.
60s, he was our athletic director. And he said, Jason, if you want to be on ESPN, which was one of my goals. You need to get a master's degree because the big networks aren't going to pay attention to you unless you've got a master's degree. This is the mid 1990s, so it's a little different now probably, but
Right.
and so he said you should get a degree in sports administration, and then you could either go into broadcasting the way you want to, or you could actually come back and go into athletic media relations and or be an athletic director someday.
Okay.
And I was working in sports. I was a big sports nut. And so I thought that's pretty smart. So I used Coach Hamilton's advice, got a master's in sports management from West Virginia University. And part of that program was an internship. I applied at ABC Radio Sports in New York and ESPN. I got both of them. But
Awesome.
ABC owned ESPN. So ABC trumped ESPN and said I couldn't go to them. I had to come to ABC. So my first job right out of college was at ABC Radio Sports in New York as a broadcaster, and did that for a couple years, and then life got in the way with wives and kids and stuff, and I got back into mainstream marketing and moved back to Kentucky.
That's awesome. I love it. It's a great memory to have. I'm sure it was a fantastic experience too.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I was I basically was a sports journalist in New York City for a couple years, which is an experience I'll cherish forever. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, very good. Well, listen, Jason, this has been a great conversation. You're working in a really interesting space. It's growing. Marketers are recognizing the value of it. I really like what CIPIO.ai is doing in terms of their approach. Not only is it different for different sake, it seems to really bring some solid benefits to the table as well. And so I expect, just like your ABC broadcasting experience, this ride will probably be as, if not more interesting and exciting for you. And I certainly wish you all the best moving forward.
Well, Mark, I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time today. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yep. All right. Thank you.